Rayford Dalton Palmer is a longtime Chicago area family law attorney, the managing shareholder of STG Divorce Law, and the author of the Amazon best-selling book, I Just Want This Done: How Smart, Successful People Get Divorced Without Losing Their Kids, Money, and Minds. I am so excited to have you here today, Raif, because you give real talk on divorce and lawyers and money. Thank you so much for being here.
The pleasure's all mine, Tracy. Thanks for having me. I love your work, so it's exciting for me to be here too. Thank you.
I know this is going to be a fun conversation because I think we all know that it is a divorce lawyer's job to know the law in the state in which you're getting divorced. And so they guide you through that legal process and fill out the right forms and help you settle the case or get through a trial, right? That's their
Right.
job.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to talk about some of the other things that divorce lawyers do in divorce cases. And maybe even more importantly, the things your divorce lawyer does not do in your divorce. Now, our audience is women who are getting divorced. And if you've never been through a divorce before, I think it's tough because you don't know what to expect.
Right. Right.
So let's talk. What are the main things that you say the divorce lawyer should be doing in the divorce case?
So the divorce lawyer should be providing the potential or the client with guidance about what the law is in their jurisdiction. So what the law says should explain to the client how the facts apply to the law so that the client has a good understanding of how the law will affect the outcome of their divorce case, and also give the client a good understanding of what is a realistic outcome in the case. So, as far as you can know at a particular point in time. So, based on the facts and the law, what can the client expect is a reasonable range of outcomes at first at a trial, and then what would be a reasonable range of settlement outcomes for the person to keep in mind so that they can make educated decisions about their case throughout. So, it's the law, the facts, what's a realistic range of outcomes? How do we get there? So, what are the ways we can get this case done? Mediation, collaborative law, arbitration, maybe, or trial. What would be the best one of those options and why? And and then the counseling to the client, not psychological counseling or emotional counseling, but counseling about their options and helping them navigate the process of divorce. That's the lawyer is supposed to be the expert guide to the client. And that's really the key role of the attorney throughout the case. And then processing the facts, gathering the information, analyzing it, and providing those analyses to the client, helping the client understand what a division of assets would look like, a division of debt, what child support and alimony might look like, what might be the possibilities for visitation and child custody, and so on. So that's the core job of the divorce attorney.
I get really frustrated with attorneys who do not give their clients expectations. Okay, in our state, alimony is available to you, but here's the catch with it. Here's the rules. And in your situation, because you've been married for 12 years, here's how we usually see this playing out. Why do you think some attorneys shy away from going that extra step and telling a client, here's what you could expect under our laws?
Two I think two things. I talk about some of this stuff in the book. It's a lack of training. So lawyers are not coached in client management or in bedside manner. Lawyers are trained to be technicians. So in
Mhm.
law school, we learn about the law. So we spend 3 years learning about statutes and case law. And by the way, it's mostly trial and appellate focused. There's very little concentration on settling cases. There's very little.
Mhm.
One of the things I talk about in the book is there's like one or two mediation classes, and there are, you take uh, you take 10 times 330 classes basically in law school, maybe, and one or two might be alternative dispute resolution focused.
It's very
The rest
procedural focused, right?
Correct. It's all what we call black letter law, which is like statutes, so state laws, and then looking at cases which interpret those laws. But that's all litigation focused. It's all trial focused. And only 5% of divorce cases go to trial nationwide. most of them settle at some point. So there's nothing about talking to clients, explaining to human beings what's going on in these cases, telling lawyers how to deal with people that are paying your bills, and actually doing the bedside manner stuff that's most of what a good lawyer does. You know,
Right.
what I tell people is when you come out of law school, you think that the law business is 90% law, 10% people. And what you learn after a while is it's 90% people and 10%
Right.
law. And you've got to get the 10% right. That's table stakes. But it's so important to be good at the 90%. And very few lawyers are, mainly because it sort of selects law school selects nerds. You know, we're all A students, right? To get you got to do well in high school, you have to do well in college, you have to pass the LSAT, the law school admissions test to get into law school. So it sort of self-selects people that are high achievers. And a lot of these folks aren't necessarily wonderful at dealing with people. And then there's no training in that either. So that's part of it. And then the next problem is you it's I mean, in the business of law, it's sort of hard to bill for that. So, it's easy to bill for court time, drafting documents, reviewing documents, the kind of lawyering stuff. But the counseling, the talking to clients and things like that is most important. And I don't think, I think lawyers get very, and I'm not trying to be cynical. It's to some extent, it's a lack of time too. Lawyers are busy, have usually a large caseload, and they've got deadlines they're trying to meet. So they're focusing on drafting documents, reading documents, and processing lawyer stuff, and talking to the clients gets short shrift as a result. So the complaints you hear all the time from clients are, my lawyer won't call me back. My lawyer's not available.
Right.
And they, what I would tell them is it's probably because they're too busy. And I mean, maybe they're neglectful. There may be some bad stuff going on, but most of them are just too busy doing the mechanical
Right.
lawyering. The irony is, and this is something we tell our attorneys, if you put time into the human stuff, you save lots of time on the lawyering stuff. Because if you actually pick up the phone and talk to your client proactively, they're going to call you less because they're going to trust you more,
Yes.
and they're more comfortable with you because they understand they just want to know you're on top of it. And if you proactively contact them and keep them informed, they're much less likely to call you every day or send you emails all the time because they're comfortable. And the truth is the same with the other lawyer. Call the other lawyer before you file a motion. Before you ask the court for something, have you asked the other attorney? Have they checked with the other party? Maybe you can do it the easy way. And instead, we tend to, as a profession, file a motion without calling the other lawyer. And then you end up in court spending money and time. And the other lawyer says, geez, if you would have called me, maybe we could have worked this out.
Right.
So,
I
yeah,
think it's such a disservice to clients to not set their expectations for what they could expect to end up with in the divorce. And I hear attorneys say, "Well, I don't want to make any promises to my client." Fine, then you say to your client, "We don't know how a judge will decide, but here's what the law says. Here's what I think the range is of what could probably happen in your case. And, here's how I would advise going about getting what we want in this regard."
exactly. That's one of the big things in I just want this done is the cost benefit analysis and explaining to the client reasonable expectations and not just being a cheerleader and pumping somebody full of sunshine. And I was just talking to my wife and law partner, Julie Gumina, about a case where the other attorney is has basically painted themselves in a corner telling the client, the other party, that a certain asset, and I won't get into details, but they'll basically get all of a retirement asset. And then that's just not going to happen, you know? And I know you're right. Lawyers back away from that and they say, well, I don't want to promise anything. We can't guarantee an outcome. Sure, on some things you can't, but on a lot of things you can. And the truth is, in these cases, unless you're dealing with a binary outcome, and what I mean by that is like somebody wants sole custody, and there's a battle over custody where it's going to be one or the other. Most of these things are decided somewhere around the middle, and they're usually only a few percentage points around a middle. unless there's very unusual circumstances, as you know. So people spend an awful lot of money and time trying to push the needle a little bit each way, and they don't take the realistic outcome into account. So what happens is if they have that unrealistic idea of what the outcomes are, they run right up to a trial. And then the lawyer either finally evaluates the case because maybe they just haven't gotten around to it, or they finally have to be honest with the client because they're afraid that if they go to trial, the client will get hammered. The judge will it, enter the decision that the client doesn't like and like divide that retirement asset in half, which we could predict is going to happen. And the client will be mad at them and say, "Well, you didn't tell me this was going to happen." And then the lawyer then can just say, "Well, the judge decided."
Right.
The ultimate cop out is to blame it on the court. When the lawyer knew damn well at the beginning of the case, those assets will be divided equally. So you're right. It's not fun to tell a client bad news. Nobody likes to tell a cop, "Hey, you're gonna have to give up half your pension." Teachers, police, fire, understandably, military, they believe their pension is rightfully theirs, and I understand that. I'm from a military family, and my mom was an educator, and my ex-wife was an educator too, and they hate parting with their pension, understandably, but it's gonna go halvesies, at
Right.
least the marital portion, and anybody who tells a client otherwise is lying to them
Right.
or provides false hope.
Is it reasonable to expect that my divorce lawyer is going to help me calculate child support or alimony under our state guidelines?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, great.
They should absolutely do that. There's a there's a program we all use called not FinPlan, that was the old one. Family law software is like as you from more familiar with this than I am. Um, Family law software is sort of the gold standard in our business, and financial planners and divorce lawyers use this program. And there are also some calculators out there on the internet. The Illinois Department of uh, Health and Family Services has a pretty good one for child support. And yes, the lawyer just plugs in the information and hits go and gets an answer that's going to be within pretty reasonable degree of accuracy about what it's going to be, unless the inputs are not good. So if the client's giving you the correct information, you're going to get a pretty accurate answer. You're right. Now, lawyers should not shy away from doing that. Yeah,
I get frustrated when a client says, "My ex is offering me $700 a month in child support, and I don't know if that's a good deal or not." Well, your attorney should be working with you to know under the state guidelines, you would be awarded $1,200 a month because
sure.
then we're going to say there's no reason to accept $700 a month unless there's something else offsetting that, some other financial fact involved where, yeah, you might decide it's fair for me to accept less than that $1,200.
Absolutely. And there's no reason why the lawyer can't spend 20 minutes or half an hour plugging the data into FLS, family law software, or similar to come up with an answer or do some back of the envelope math for maintenance because the formula is not that complicated. And,
Okay.
you're absolutely right.
So we've gone over, I think, some of the most important things that the divorce lawyer should and should not do. So we've decided they should be coming up with a strategy for your divorce. They should be advising you on, what the law says and what some likely outcomes are and where you might end up with support payments. Let me run through quickly a few questions that I have.
Sure.
So, um, if a client wants to do stupid things in their divorce, should the attorney give them pushback and how much? Like, how much is it the lawyer's responsibility to stop the client from doing stupid things or agreeing to stupid things?
The lawyer should be warning the client about doing stupid things, which warn against that. And
Mhm.
the toughest job of an attorney is telling a client no.
Right.
This is something I tell our team all the time. And it's also the highest and best thing you can do. And you because if you just let the client's id go wild, let them do what they want to do, they're going to get into trouble and they're going to be unhappy later with the result. And if the best thing we can do is tell the client, no, don't do that. And here's why. And explain to them and not just treat them like children. That's not what I'm talking about, but being like a doctor and telling people the risks of surgery, so to speak. So here's what'll happen. Here's what's likely to happen if you do X, Y, and Z. Here are the potential downsides. Here's why I advise against it, and then put it in writing. And if the client disobeys you at that point, well, you did your job. But the mistake I see, or the thing I see that I dislike greatly, and we talk about this on our team all the time, and the book is really almost a manifesto about how we believe in practicing law in this business. And originally, when I was writing it, it was almost like a manifesto about the divorce lawyer profession. And then I realized, well, I'm gonna only sell 10 copies of this thing to my mom and my family if I write a book for divorce lawyers.
Right.
So, like, I better write this for potential for clients, people going through divorce, and change the angle. But the beginning of the book kind of talks about the problems inherent in the system so that people understand why it is the way it is.
Right.
And they don't, because I don't think that's discussed very much. So to get back to your point, we must tell the client and warn them when they're getting into trouble. And it's like, to me, it's like a doctor warning somebody of, hey, if you keep chain smoking, you're going to get lung cancer, or you need to work on your diet, or whatever it is. We know as professionals what these outcomes are because we've seen enough of these cases. I've been doing this for 23 years as a divorce lawyer and 30 years this month actually as a lawyer, which is kind of surprising to me.
Wow.
But it's we know what's gonna happen because they're patterns, and we've seen it before. So, if we don't tell them, we're doing clients a disservice. But I know there are lawyers that I don't wanna say play dumb, but they don't intervene, and they don't tell the client no, and they kind of let the client what they'll say to us as the lawyer on the other side is, "Well, that's what my client wants."
Right.
"Well, I guess we're just gonna let the children have ice cream for dinner, and lunch and breakfast." "Okay,
Right.
sure, that's what they want." Well, come on. We've got We're professionals. You said, what is the lawyer supposed to do? Well, the lawyer's supposed to cage the client and protect them from themselves sometimes, or to the extent possible.
And
And,
you made a very good point when you said, "And tell the client why." Because
yeah,
I get frustrated when a client says, "My attorney said I'm not gonna get alimony." And then that was the end of the discussion. No, explain to your client why. In our state, alimony is not going to kick in unless you've been married more than 5 years. Or in our state, it's almost impossible to get alimony because this, and this, right? If clients know why, they're much happier clients, they're much more informed clients, they're less
absolutely.
likely to do stupid things.
Yeah, if you an educated client is a much better client, both they'll have a better outcome, they're happier all the way through, are more satisfied with things, and they understand why things are the way they are, and they're gonna make better decisions because they're better informed. It's like anything else. If if you're a better informed at any purchasing decision or decisions with medical things or buying something, you're going to do better and have a better result and be a happier customer.
Okay, is it the lawyer's job to keep the secrets of the client?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's like confidentiality is an ethical duty.
Okay, so what about if I'm the client and I'm committing some crimes? Like maybe I put a tracker on my husband's car and in my state it's illegal to do that. Do you still have to keep that secret?
Yeah, we're not mandated reporters for like child abuse things. And we, yeah, we can't disclose client confidences. Now, what's proper to do in a situation like that is like withdraw from the representation. You don't want to represent somebody like that. But we have a pretty unless I think the ethics rules are, without looking them up right now, if we know that there's like a crime in progress, like somebody says, I'm going to go kill my wife, we have a duty to call the police. But if they disclose, let's say, a financial crime, like I stole money from somebody, my father in law, I stole 10 grand from a safe and I put it in a jar. We, we can't disclose that information.
Okay,
I mean, client confidentiality is number one, but that's a fair question.
sure. Okay, when it comes to the money in the divorce, is it the divorce lawyer's job to go through the financial documents and figure out where the husband is hiding money?
It's it can be, but that's not our concentration. I mean, that's lawyers who have that's where you come in. So, um, in a in a simple matter, sure. In a less complex matter, a lawyer who has experience in a more complex financial case, like our team does, we're comfortable doing, I would say, the everyday analysis of basic. review of financials, looking for obvious things. You see a transaction out of an account to another account that we don't have records for. You can ask for that other account, things of that nature. But if you think there's any substantial malfeasance going on or wrongdoing, or they're just things that don't add up, you have to have an expert like you get involved in the case. And you're the best I know of in the business. And I'm not just
Thank
saying
you.
that. Yeah. And we are big believers in bringing in experts to be part of the team. And that's something I really learned when I started doing collaborative practice in around '07, working with financial neutrals, divorce coaches, and then also learning, hey, we need valuation experts to value businesses, and then somebody like you to give us to do tracing and detailed analysis of income when there's uncertain or confusing income, tax returns don't match other documents, things of that nature. We're not CPAs, we're not financial planners. So it's important for lawyers to know their limitations and to advise the client to bring in a team of experts when necessary. Most cases don't require,
Right.
but then there are those that do. And I can't tell you what percentage it is, but it's a decent percentage in our business that probably 10% or more needs either a financial neutral or somebody who's like a certified divorce financial analyst or someone with your skill set to find hidden assets, detects dissipation, which is waste of marital assets, and track that down. And then uh, one of the other valuable things is determining when income is uncertain or confusing. Like somebody's running a cash business, or they have a restaurant or a chain of restaurants, bars, construction, and they're dealing with checks, and then the cash is mysteriously disappearing, or the lifestyle is way out of line with the dollars reported on tax returns. A classic thing is 50 grand in reported on uh, the tax return, and they've got two BMWs, two houses, and they fly to Mexico all the time. And
Right.
it's out of line with the stuff you see doesn't fit the lifestyle at all.
When it comes to those ordinary cases, and I like to say 90 to 95% of cases don't need a financial expert. It's something that really the client, by looking at their own statements, can figure out what's been going on. I get frustrated when the client in that position says, okay, I've looked at the credit card statements and I see he was spending money on his affair partner. The judge is going to look at that, right? They say to me, well, no, you've got to lay out your case for the judge. You've got to pull it together. You can't expect that someone else is magically gonna say, "Ha, I should look at the details of the credit card statements." Judges don't have time to do that, and so you've gotta go through a process to identify what transactions were for the affair partner and put that proof together.
Absolutely right, and that's where the lawyer can help, or a financial expert like you can help with that work. And the one caveat I have on that is that's that cost benefit, because a lot of the alleged dissipation, courts don't like dissipation claims generally unless they're obvious, like the
Yes.
vacation with the affair partner or the jewelry purchase, something big and obnoxious. If it's, oh, they're spending more on dinners than they used to, or that I don't like that he goes to the Hawks game with his buddies, the courts don't care. The judge generally is not going to find something like that to be dissipation. It's got to be outrageous.
Okay. Let me go through a few more quick ones as we're wrapping up.
Sure.
Is it the attorney's job to recommend professionals that might be needed in the case?
Sure.
And so you would recommend we need to hire a professional. Would you make a recommendation of specifically which professional you would want to use?
I usually would give, if the client has somebody in mind, I'm not going to step on their toes unless they're just the person isn't qualified. So I'll check their qualifications. And for example, if they say, well, I want my realtor to do an appraisal of the house, like, well, a CMA is not going to do it for a trial. I want a real appraisal
Mhm.
from a respected appraiser, because I need them to testify at trial and have the court believe the appraisal to be credible. Um, that's a small example. Yes, I would provide recommended folks to be on that team if the client didn't have somebody already, certainly.
Okay. Is it the divorce lawyer's job to figure out a parenting schedule for mom and dad?
We're here to help with that, but that's largely a personal preference and what people think is best for their children. I prefer having people speak to a parenting coach or somebody who's a specialist in that. Um, Person named Tammy Hildebrand is one that um, I'm a fan of, and she's in Naperville, and she does a great work with that and helps people work out parenting agreements. Excuse me. And so the answer is yes, we will help with that, but and give people models for what they might do. Like, you can do what we call 2-2-3 schedule if you want 50-50, which is 2 days for one parent, 2 days for the other, and like a 3-day weekend, and then keep alternating, or 3-4-4-3. We can suggest options, but we try not to drive that conversation because it's so personal, and it's up to where the parents live, what their roles are going to be, how old their kids are. There's so many variables.
I like the idea of a parenting coach too, because they have experience with all the different variables. And in some divorces, I think you have to be super detailed and specific with the parenting plan about if this, then that. If he doesn't do this, then that, because you have a co parent who is looking for loopholes. But in other divorce cases, you can be more general and make a simple plan because we're all going to cooperate. And so the parenting coach, I think, can be really invaluable in that role, in that process.
I agree. Yeah, the coaches are very valuable to really walk through what's best for kids, especially at certain age ranges and based on their circumstances. So yeah, you're right about that for sure.
Do you think it's the role of the divorce lawyer to tell their client if a proposed settlement is a good deal or not?
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
huge. That's
Yeah.
one of our main jobs, is to tell them whether we think it's a good deal or not.
hmm Okay, let's talk about your best-selling book, I Just Want This Done. I think that's the way most people feel about their divorce. They
Okay.
just want it over.
Right.
But I want to know why you chose the title.
Because at some point in the divorce process, everybody feels that way. And it's a universal thought of people at some point in a divorce. Like, I just want this. The original draft, I think, was I just want this over, which sounds a little more passive. And so we thought, it's more of an affirmative statement. I want this done, get this finished. And
But let me be
that's
clear, I don't think you're saying, "Let's hurry up and do the divorce as fast as possible." Like, don't
right,
take a bad deal just so you can be done with it, right?
right. That's right. It's more of a sort of the client's frustration with the system and the whole situation. And people want it to be, they want a good result, but they want it over with.
Right.
And so it's kind of a universal feeling, I think, with most people. And people will say it really resonates. They'll say, like, "Oh, the title's amazing," because they get it. And at some point, everybody kind of feels that way in the process, and they understand on a fundamental level.
Well, we are gonna link to the book in the show notes as well as your firm website, but if
Thanks.
you had to name the number 1 spot you wanted people to go and check you out, where would it be?
I think TikTok is great. I'm at Rayford Palmer on TikTok. I have tons of content going back years there. And also Instagram, similar content at Rayford Palmer. Very easy to find. Thanks. You can just search on Google too, and you'll find all this material.
Yep, we will put it all in the show notes. Rafe, thank you so much. A lot of really valuable information today. It
Thank
was
you.
wonderful having you.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Tracy.